This video is dedicated to my dad, who's going through quite a rough time at the moment. Love you, Dad. So much Dungeons and Dragons. So many video game RPGs. Such was my life, ages 15 to 25, the turn of the millennium, a golden age of gaming. A misspent youth perhaps, or just rehearsing the epic hero's journey. 10,000 hours thus invested, and now it's just how I'm wired. For better or worse, I understand the world in terms of leveling up, of experience points gained, of skills and techniques acquired, of quests achieved. But this is not LARPing, this is real life. There's no extra lives, no save points. This is reality. So what's the aim of the game? Get your name on that high score table, of course. At least in your division, for the hand you were dealt, for your own particular role of the genetic dice, in your time and space. Though ultimately, we play against ourselves. And the game is personal development, striving to be the best possible version of oneself. A life well lived, rich in experience, perhaps even such that the world will be a better place for your having been in it. And for me, self-knowledge is the way to achieve it. Self-reflection, self-authoring, self-actualization. This is the work. Answers to the question, who am I and why? Who do I want to be? What do I want to feel? What do I want to achieve, to make, to have? Remember, one life. What do you want yours to mean? Anyway, such are the lofty ideals. The manifesting in reality of one's own will. Not in any mystic, magical sense, but simply making shit happen. To be a force of nature, a freelance generator of awesome, transcendence, storming the Godhead, rah! All of which, of course, is easier said than done. So we fail, we fall short, and we try again. And the victory is in the overcoming of adversity, of rising when we fall. That, after all, is the hero's journey. Venturing into the unknown, outcome uncertain, risk balanced against reward. But there be dragons, they guard the gold. And that's life, chasing the gold. Chasing our goals, be they grandiose or mundane, they're still our goals. They're goals precisely because we don't already have them. We may or may not achieve them, and the outcomes are to some degree dependent on ourselves. Here enters willpower, that elusive beast. The application of will, the application of self. This is the essence of free will. We compare reality to our own internally held standards, and then take action to bring reality in line with them. Incidentally, just as important as free will is free won't, as being a slave to one's impulses and compulsions is not freedom. Freedom is that which increases choice. So it becomes a question of how effectively are we able to apply ourselves to achieving our goals. And because the 10,000 hours of mastery cannot come overnight, at least not until Matrix-style knowledge transfers become reality, it's our daily habits that have the greatest cumulative effect on our lives. So we must cultivate habits that will lead us to long-term success. Which brings me to my point, and the original inspiration for this video, which, at first, was just to share an awesome little tool that I discovered. It's called Habit Tracker for Android. Its function ought to be self-evident just from its name. You create a habit to be tracked. Every day you get to check it off as done, or not. Then, as you accumulate data over time, you get to geek out at a bunch of different ways of presenting that data. It's clean and simple, perfectly does what it sets out to do. It's just one of those beautiful little pieces of software, and after using it for 4 months, I can't really think of a way to make it better. So, technically sweet, sure, but what's been surprising is how much of a motivational instrument it's become in my life. I think I can confidently say I'm a better person because of this app. How? Because Habit Tracker is a concrete way to know thyself. It's a self-knowledge tool. Now, I'd like to give some context as to where I was in my life around the time when I started tracking habits. I'd started to let some things slide, which, of course, is the nature of life. We get busy, priorities shift, we lose sight of those ideal standards we'd previously set for ourselves. I like to call this the law of diminishing intent, but really, it's just the human condition. I wasn't really exercising, I wasn't eating well. I'd find myself seeking distraction, avoiding responsibilities, avoiding my emotions. Of course, these things tend to cluster, and at that stage, it wasn't anything super serious. But I noticed the whole empathy for future self thing was definitely slipping. And I've slipped before in my life. It's one of the advantages, actually, to having been through such darkness, through depression, and in my case, through some heavy drug addiction. So I know the signs. Indeed, am now acutely sensitive to them. And that's just a survival necessity, as I've had bad habits that could have nearly killed me. And that's the whole point of self-knowledge, to be sensitive enough to the changes in your life in order that you may act early. What was called for was one of those periodical resets that we all need to do now and then, a realignment, a proclamation of and recommitment to one's goals. Sometimes in life, you just have to start again, with baby steps. Because at that particular point in my life, I didn't really have any good habits other than working hard in my business and trying to be an awesome father and partner. I really felt I had to start from scratch. So far from the lofty ideals of the Nietzschean Übermensch. Sure enough, the first habits I started tracking seem trivial now, but you got to start somewhere. My first habit was called lymph. Simply lie on the ground with your legs up a wall, forming a right angle. This helps drain the lymphatic system and is just generally beneficial for the circulation. It's also good for me as I spend a lot of the day on my feet, have been historically prone to back and neck pain. Inverting the body is helpful. It can be done in 5 minutes as a good way to wind down just before bed, so it's very hard to make an excuse for, regardless of what kind of day you've had. My second habit was called 3 squats, a basic core strength exercise. Hold a squat for 45 seconds or however long. Do this 3 times over the course of the day. Easy to accomplish, can be done while working or wherever. Very little options in terms of excuses. And that's how the ball got rolling again, with the smallest possible standard for success. And it's true, they are trivial, but that's the point. Because at first what you're really practicing is the starting of things. With so many things in life, it's just beginning the thing that proves the greatest challenge. But then, once begun, it's as if the follow-through just takes care of itself. By accomplishing such relatively trivial things, we begin to train our muscle of willpower. Small victories give self-confidence, through which we can build momentum as we work up to bigger victories. It's the meta practice of practicing the art of practice. So, after a few weeks of that, I'd started spontaneously doing a bit of yoga. And my 3 squats habit was upgraded to yoga/physical. Most often this will be a set of yoga sun salutations and warrior poses, but it can also be push-ups, pull-ups, planks, or a session on my climbing wall, or maybe it happens to be a family beach day and I'll do battle against the waves until I'm exhausted. This morning I went on a big bushwalk with my daughter and ended up carrying her for a long time and decided to push myself up some big hills. I intentionally keep the criteria loose, as it's more about consciously engaging one's willpower and every day doing something than any one particular exercise. Around this time, I also discovered Wim Hof, aka the Iceman. So I started tracking my breathing exercises and cold exposure training. And so, with this handful of physical habits, I'm doing something to maintain or improve every day my cardiovascular and circulatory system through the breathing and cold exposure, my posture through the squats and leg inversion, and my general strength and mobility through the yoga. But what I'm really training here are the meta-mind muscles called deferral of gratification and empathy for future self. And I'm trusting they'll do a great job of maintaining the efficient functioning of this meat robot vessel that is I. Physical aspect thus taken care of, I moved on to higher realms. And for the first time in my life, I've really put my mind to properly trying meditation. Again, I set my criteria for success somewhere achievable. Just taking 5 minutes of a day to calm my otherwise constantly racing mind, sitting still, seeking centeredness, whatever that may mean, and just consciously breathing and being present in my body. Now, essential to an effective propulsion system is to have both something to move toward and something to move away from. It's the carrot and the stick. So I've also been tracking some bad habits from the beginning. Specifically, coffee. Over the past year, I somehow got into the habit of buying iced coffees once a week or so. No big deal, right? But because I've never been a coffee drinker in my life, I have zero tolerance to caffeine, and it smashes me. And if I consume any kind of caffeine after 2 p.m, it's pretty much ensured that I won't be sleeping before midnight. As someone with quite a bit of experience with hardcore stimulants, it always amazes me just how potent caffeine is physiologically, and yet it's still such a socially acceptable drug. In any case, it's another dependency, and something that I don't want to need. Shit food. Basically, any time I succumb to junk food, usually on Philosopher's pizza and beer nights. I track my self-medication habits, that is vaping, and also masturbation. Blush. Then there's a couple of miscellaneous maintenance habits, flossing and oil pulling. Again, by accomplishing the easy stuff consistently, we're building momentum. Most recently, I've added writing, which is any journaling or article writing, or for instance, me writing this very script I'm speaking now, and business meeting. My partner and I run our own business, and we're learning gradually how to work on our business instead of just in our business. This being what separates the entrepreneur from a worker. By the way, you can check us out here, activeearthfood.com.au, and use the voucher TRR10 for 10% off. Finally, the pinnacle, as of today at least, of my habit tracking escapades, I'm calling Manu Touch. Manu is my partner, the love of my life, the mother of my child, all that good stuff. Incidentally, she makes awesome parenting vids over on her channel, Mama Manu. A friend of ours who'd also been in business with their partner gave us some advice once. She said, do something fun every day. I often think on that, but only ever in the sense that we're so far from it. So this habit is about consciously making time to reconnect with Manu, to stop, even if just for 5 minutes, the constant rushing from one task to another that is our lives, and just focus on and be with her. That could be as simple as asking how her day was, and really listening, offering to give her a massage or light a candle when we have dinner. Just some little expression of my love and gratitude to her, so that she just doesn't know that I'm here for her, but that she feels it too. Being connected with her makes every other thing we do better, and this is important as we do pretty much everything together. So that's it. That's where I'm at. And guess what? It's working. I couldn't be making this video otherwise. I just wouldn't be organized or motivated or energetic enough. So what is it about making a little check mark in a box? How does such a simple act become a source of motivation? One way I think of it is that checking a box is the smallest conceivable amount of accountability. In the sense that if you've got a boss and he tells you to do something, you'll be hearing about it if you don't. So every day I have this self-imposed obligation to open Habit Tracker, acknowledge the goals I've set for myself, and declare whether or not I've acted on them. It's a way of generating personal responsibility, holding oneself to account, and training willpower. In another sense, Habit Tracker confers a literal kind of countability. One of the ways in which Habit Tracker presents your data is by counting your longest consecutive streaks. That is, a habit checked off X days in a row. Apparently Jerry Seinfeld used to do something like this. He decided he wanted to work on his writing and comedy every single day. So he opted for the low-tech expedient of a calendar on the wall and a big fat marker, or so the story goes. He called this strategy, "Don't break the chain." This is a great way of building momentum, because once I've done, say, 3, 4, or 5 days in a row of a given habit, my inherently competitive nature kicks in, and now I'm trying to break my previous record streak. High score tables, remember? Which is something I've been doing all my life. My earliest clear memory of something like this may have been as young as 10. Walking home from primary school, there'd always be plenty of rolled up newspapers lying around on people's front yards. I'd play this game with myself of counting rotations in half-spin increments, seeing how high I could get. And this sort of thing has never stopped. Whether it was juggling a soccer ball or hacky sack, doubling exponentials in my head, hitting trick jumps and railgun in Quake, my fire dancing, always with this internally generated motivation. How many in a row could I do? It's how I'm wired. Life as game. It's a self-knowledge thing. To know who you really are, and then exploit your strengths. I got really good at games, and 15 years on I'd still destroy 95% of people in any mouse and keyboard based first-person shooter you'd care to mention. Duel me. So if I know I'm good at games, if I know they motivate me, then why not gamify my life? And indeed, there's another habit tracking app that's taking this very idea and run with it. In Habitica, your checked off habits literally give you experience points and gold, with which you level up a little avatar and buy gear for him. What's more, it's a full social network, so you get to team up with your friends, go on quests with them, and if you haven't been checking off your habits, then you'll be hearing from your friends about it. Such a genius way of generating accountability. It's also one of the reasons I'm making this video. By putting this on YouTube for anyone to see, I'm telling the maximum number of people about my goals. I'm telling the world, hey, building good habits is essential to a quality life. But really, I'm talking as much to myself as I am to you out there. This is a message to my subconscious. It's a public declaration of my beliefs, in the same sense as when James and I make a video about parenting. By communicating our ideals publicly and with conviction, we give ourselves strength so that when parenting gets challenging, as it inevitably will, we'll be more likely to remember those ideals for which we strive. This brings me to an important idea, that of extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. Are we driven by our own internal motivation, or must we rely on external approval and recognition to drive us? Do we need some outside entity to push us to do the right things? This question has an almost religious flavor to it. Are we good because of God and fear the punishment of hell or reward of heaven? Or are we good because we ourselves want to be good? It's a deep question. I've been working my way through the Jordan Peterson Maps of Meaning lectures, which I recommend most highly. Peterson might point out just how much we're embedded in larger systems, and that it might actually be functionally impossible to even talk of the self, except in relationship to our greater social context. While it's true we're all individuals, our value structures are almost exclusively derived from the culture we happen to be born into, and so many of our true emotions are buried deep in the unconscious. What, after all, is the distinction between internal and external when we all have little models of other people in our heads approving or disapproving of the things we do? Peterson also emphasizes the narrative nature of consciousness. He talks about a narrative as being a way of getting from here to there, hence maps of meaning. Because at the end of the day, we're all just telling stories in our head. And the stories we tell ourselves either serve us or they don't. So I try to invest my life with meaning. I try to frame my reality in such a way that I know to inspire me. And if gaining levels helps me live my life more effectively, then so be it. For this directly translates to more quality time spent with my family, to more time devoted to my passions. This is winning life. Finally, the last thing I want to mention is that the point of this app is to make itself unnecessary. It's simply a tool to use until the desired habit has been firmly established. In the same sense that there's no need for the crutches after the broken leg is healed, nor the scaffolding once the building has been built. That said, there's no end to the growth that is possible. After all, how high does a tree grow? As high as it can. And you can too. Rise up.